Hello, my name is Pavel Křipola from blenderfig.com and welcome to the part number 14 of the Node Editor tutorial series, and in this part we are going to handle the deleting of the stuff, and we will make sure that it's bugless as much as possible. As you can see, we will make sure that we are still able to edit anything and use the delete key inside of the text edits inside of the nodes. We will make sure it will not crash when we press delete and delete the stuff from the scene itself. So I hope you are excited, and let's start coding. So there is a bug I noticed. If you start dragging an edge and then you click on the same socket again, we got a crash because we are actually logging everything into the console. We can check out what actually happened. So edge drag start was correct and the edge drag end crashed, and this line is here, so everything above was okay, and somewhere here happened the crash. But actually, if you think about what we wanna do, if we click on the socket and then click on the same socket again, we are not going to create any new edge, we are not cancelling any edge, and we are not removing any edge. So we basically do wanna cancel the drag edge. So we can add a new if statement here, that this logic is going to be applied only if the item.socket, which is the last socket where we clicked, is not equal to self last start socket. Then we are going to run this code. Otherwise, there is not gonna be any else statement, because in the case we clicked on the same socket, we are going to continue with this function here. So that means we are going to end dragging edge, we are going to remove the drag edge and basically cancel. So let's test it out. If I click on the socket and then click on it again, then you can see everything was done. If I check out the scene with the right mouse button, click on the scene, we got still 3 nodes, 2 edges. This socket is set, and this one has an edge too. So this basically works. So let's start implementing the logic, what's going to happen when we press the delete key. Basically we got a lot of overridden mouse events here. So underneath we are going to create or override the function key press event. We are going to rename this, so event, and we can say that if event.key is equal to qt key underscore delete, then we are going to delete everything what's selected in the scene. And for that, to keep the logic clean, I will create a new function and I will call self delete selected. Again, we do wanna keep this function as readable as possible, so define a new function. It's gonna be delete selected, and here we are going through each item which is selected in the scene. The scene itself, I mean the graphical scene, so self gr scene, provides really useful method called selected items. And for each item in the selected item list, we are going to decide if it's gonna be an edge or if it's gonna be a node. So we already know that here the gr scene returns like QDM graphic edge, Bezier or whatever. So we already know that the edge can be detected if the item is instance of QDM graphic edge. So if is instance item and a QDM graphic edge, then we know that the current item has a reference to the edge, so item.edge, and we can call remove. when I press play, then you can select an edge, press delete, and as you can see, the edge got deleted. I will check it out. Right mouse button click in the scene, so we got 3 nodes and 1 edge. Now this socket is empty and all of these are 2. So this actually works, which is awesome. And in case, so if this condition is not met, then we are going to do elif, and we will check if the item is something of a node. So has etc item. So if it's having attribute node, then probably the item is a node. So it should have a reference to the node, item.node.remove. But I guess we haven't defined this function yet. Anyways, to be complete, I don't want to override the key press event for everything, only for the delete. So if it's not being the key delete pressed, I'm gonna call super key press event and pass the original event. So keep the logic untouched if something else than a delete key was pressed. Okay, and for the node, let me check. We don't have remove method, so let's define remove. Let me block out the code for you. So basically I will log everything out, and let's say removing node, and we are going to, in the first place, we are going to remove all edges from sockets. Then we are going to remove gr node, so the graphical node, and we are then going to remove the node from the scene. And after that we can type that everything was done. So this is going to be the logic. I guess, yes, we don't have defined the debug, so let's say debug equals to true, and we can start typing the code. So remove node from the scene is done by calling self scene dot remove node, and we can pass self. So the removing the graphical node, that's gonna be self.scene.grScene.remove item, and we are going to remove self gr node. And to be sure, we can set gr node to be none. So removing all edges from sockets. Basically the edge got a remove method, so we can go through each socket. So for socket, in self.inputs plus self.outputs. This is really awesome feature in Python. We can append these two lists together, and here we know that the socket has an edge, and also it has a method called hasEdge. So if socket dot hasEdge is true, then we are going to call socket dot edge dot remove, and maybe we can print out to the console again few blank spaces, removing edge socket dot edge and removing from socket, let's write it this way, like this. Now when I press play, I can select the node, and when I press delete, you can see we are removing all edges from the sockets, from one socket, one edge, remove gr node from the scene, and everything was done. Let's check it out. We got 2 nodes remaining and 1 edge, so this is okay. So let's go here up to the edge, and I will enable the debugging. We don't need this debug here, and here we are doing basically the same thing. But I noticed when now I press delete, you can see the application crashes, and actually the problem is not in the node but in the edge itself. So let's add some debugging to the edge so we can see what's actually happening. So removing edge, so remove edge from all sockets, and here we can write everything is done. Remove edge from scene, remove graphical edge, and now when I press play, I believe I can select these two and press delete and it will crash. So let's have a look what actually happened. We are removing node. This node removed edge, then we are removing edge, everything was done, okay. Then we go and removed another node. Here we started to removing again all the edges, one edge left, and we were removing this edge, and now we were removing edge, we removed the edge from the scene, and we got a crash. So let's check it out. Remove gr edge, that's here. Remove edge from the scene, and everything was not done. So basically this means that we crashed exactly on this line. So we can go ahead and type try except any exception as E, and we can, if debug, print exception, and we got an exception which we reference as E. So let's test it out again. Now when I press delete, everything was done and it worked. This is really strange. It probably should not work. Removing edge, everything was done. Removing node, everything was done, everything was done. So let's try that again. It still works. So maybe let me remove this if. Yeah, and now you can see there is an exception. List.remove x is not in the list, which means basically one simple thing. When we have these two nodes and two edges selected, we started with a list of items which were selected, and we started to remove nodes, and probably when the node is being removed, the edge is being removed too. And if it's found in the list again, and then we try to remove the edge again, and it's not in the list, we got an exception. Now we are catching the exception, so the application doesn't crash. But we were not before, so that was the reason why it actually crashed. We can try to print out the type of the exception. Okay, I accidentally executed it 2 times. So now when I press delete, I should be able to find an exception, which I am not, because in this case I actually removed the nodes or the edges first and then the nodes. So we got an exception which is list remove, and it's a class value error. So that basically means that we can accept and value error type exception, and if this is going to happen, then we will call just a path. Basically we don't need this anymore, and we can leave this one like this. Okay, I delete, it still works. So let's try that a few times. It still is running. Okay, let's try that again. Delete, and it still works. Awesome. Now we got only one node which is correct too. Okay, that means that this functionality actually works. So we can move along, and for now I will just disable the debug here, and this debug in the node I will set to false too. So we are not going to be overwhelmed anymore in the console. I press delete, this one still works. Awesome. So with this delete key we introduced another issue we need to solve, and that's basically when we are inside of the node, somewhere in a queue text widget or text edit or line edit or anything which handles the keyboard itself. When I press delete, nothing is happening, and if I got the node selected and then I press delete, you can see it got deleted. So there is an issue. Let me show you. If I print in the key press event here in the node graphic view, key press gr view, and then I'm going here to the node content widget inside of the text edit, and I will override the key press event too. So for that I need to create a new class. So let's call that qdm text edit. That's class qdm text edit. This is going to inherit from q text edit, and we will redefine the key press event, and we wanna call just the parent key press event or the super. And first off we wanna print out that we are inside of the qdm text edit key press. So now when I press play and I'm inside of the text edit itself, when I press a key, you can see we actually got called graphical view key press and then the QTM text edit key press. That means that the event is being propagated from up to the bottom. So that means first get notified the view, the scene, other items inside of the hierarchy, and the QTM text edit is being called as the last one. So that's a major problem for us. If it was the other way around, so the first one would be called the QTM text edit, and then this event would be propagated up to the graphical view, then we could basically go up to here to the key press event and delete, handle the delete key as usual, and we could say something like event.ignore to stop propagating the event from bottom to top. But this is not our case, because in PyQt5 or Qt5 the event is being propagated from up to the bottom. So we need another solution for that, and that could be easily done with using a flag. So imagine that we will create a new flag. So that's gonna be something like a bool, and it's gonna be called editing flag, and by default this is gonna be false. Then we can go here to the key press event, and we can decide that if the delete key was pressed and we are not editing anything, then we are going to delete the selected items. So if not self dot editing flag, go ahead and delete the content. Otherwise we will keep the logic of the key press event, the delete, untouched. So that means now we are not editing, and when I press play you can see I can delete the node, and if I select the node and I'm inside of the text edit and I press delete, it still works as it was. But if we were editing, so if we set this flag to be true and I select the node and I'm inside of any widget where I do actually use keyboard and I can use the delete key, you can see now it works and the node is not being deleted. So the last thing for us is somehow notify the node graphic view that we are actually editing or not. And we can go back to the node content widget, and inside here there are two events we are going to use. It's gonna be define focus in event and define focus out event. So let's rename these two to event. We are going to print focus in, and we are going to call super.focusin because we don't want to change the logic of the focus event, and the same goes here, focus out event, and we will pass again the event. Then you can notice one thing, that once I click inside, we did focus in, and we should be able to set correctly the flag, the editing flag, to not handle the delete key. And if we click somewhere else or on the widget itself, we actually get focus out. Now we are focused in. If I click on some other node, we got focused out. So this is what we need to do and override or add the logic of setting up the editing flag. So in our case, we can basically ask a parent widget, so we can call something like self parent widget, which will basically return the widget which the text edit is in. So in our case, here is the widget which got a layout, and the widget is being set or appended or added here. So this means that the parent widget will have a reference to the QDM node content widget, and in our case we can basically say parent widget set editing flag to some value, and here it's gonna be true and here it's gonna be false. Then means we do need to add this new method here, so define set editing flag, and we need somehow to access the graphical view from this widget, but we got no reference to anything here. So let me Alt F7 find this instantiation which is inside of our node, so we can basically pass the reference to the node, to the QDM node content widget. So let's say node, let's store this reference, so self node equals to node, and now we can basically go self node dot scene, and this contains the graphical scene, and the graphical scene has a method called views which returns a list of all graphical views which this scene is inserted in. So that means we need to access the first one, and we can then set the editing flag directly. So editing flag equals to value. Now when I press play and I select something and press delete, it doesn't work. Why is that? Because by default this is gonna be false. Okay, so let's try it again. I select something, press delete, and it works. Once I click somewhere here, you can see we got our focus in, so the editing flag was set, and we can delete the text properly even when the node is selected, and this logic is now fixed. So let me clean up the code a little bit. In the node content widget, we do not need to see key press event nor the prints, so let's do it this way. Let me create maybe a new file for this class, but it's not necessary yet. The node is fixed, and the graphical view, we are going to the key press, and we are going to delete the print statement here. This one works too, and the editing flag is readable too. Okay, so basically this is it. We got the functionality of deleting nodes and edges, which actually accepts the text edits and line edits. The only thing you need to keep in mind that when you are creating any content inside of the node, it needs to pass somehow the change of the editing flag up to the graphical view, which we are doing here in the set editing flag. So basically, if you will create some kind of other content type widgets like this one, I would create definitely some base class which would handle the set editing flag for you, this method, one line, and in the other ones, content widgets, they would actually extend the base class and have the init UI method with setting up these things here. But remember, if you start using text edit or line edit or anything like that, you need to have this focus in or out events modified, so therefore you should probably create something like QDM line text edit with the same logic as described here. Okay, so this will be everything for this part. I hope you learned something and see you at the next part.